We're Amy and Christina, two moms who learned the hard way that there's a lot we wish we knew about pregnancy and parenting.
So now we're asking experts all the questions, sharing what we've learned and what we're still figuring out, and keeping it real along the way. Welcome to What I Wish I Knew. Okay, so you know those conversations where you meet someone and then 5 minutes in, you're like, yeah, I definitely have a girl crush. That was this episode with Dr. Sarah Oreck.
Sarah is a reproductive psychiatrist, a mom of three, and honestly, just the kind of person you want in your corner when postpartum hits like a mother effing truck. We are thrilled not to gatekeep her anymore, so let's get into it. Sarah, thank you so much for being on and chatting with us today. We appreciate your time, and so thank you so much for being with us.
Of course, I'm excited to be here.
So let's start off with just tell us a little bit about yourself. You're in the profession of helping women navigate mental health. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so I'm a reproductive psychiatrist by training, and what that means is that I went to medical school. I trained as a general psychiatrist. I did that program at Columbia University in New York, and while I was there, I found that probably the best psychiatrist in the world would be confronted with someone who was pregnant or breastfeeding and would not know what to do. And I was fortunate enough to be at a same program with some great researchers and actually a fellowship that was specialized in women's mental health. So that's really how female reproductive hormones impact mental health differently throughout the life cycle, from first period to last, but in particular around this huge transition to parenthood and motherhood. And so was really fortunate to have that training and really have dedicated my career since to this really specialized area, which I think will become a subspecialty like eating disorders, like substance use disorders are this separate part of mental health. This area is so nuanced and there's so little research. We base most of our medical education and research on research done on men. So this is really an exciting space, and I've just absolutely loved working in this area, but even before I had my own kids.
I was going to ask, what drew you towards like maternal or even female-based like care?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So at some points in medical school, I loved OBGYN, but I saw how unhappy they were. And ultimately, I also saw, the schedule is just really hard over like a long life. And like being 50 or 60 and still being on call is like a hard thing. But also, I was most compelled by the women that were struggling with mental health issues. It felt like they were very stigmatized. There wasn't really much empathy for people. Like, for example, I remember my first delivery was a woman who was high on either crack or some kind of stimulant. And the way that the staff kind of approached her was so heartbreaking to me, knowing that this person was struggling with something so significant and that no mother would want to be separated from her baby. And so that made a huge impact on me. Also, my mom had very early menopause symptoms, and I remember those so vividly growing up, probably when I was like in middle school. And a part of me always felt compelled, like, why don't we know enough about that time? Why did my mom struggle so much? And so those were kind of inspirations towards this. And I couldn't believe that this field actually existed. But I'm so glad it did.
A terrifying statistic that I'm not going to say what it was because I don't remember the numbers, but it was something to the effect of an insane amount of funding and time and effort and brains go towards research based on men.
Yeah.
Or like around men versus
Yeah.
women. The number was astounding and I really should have written it down, but it made me angry. So I just clicked away.
I mean, you can think about erectile dysfunction as like a great example of that. Like, we've invested so much time, pharmaceuticals to like figure this out. And yet all of these other kind of female issues have really been mostly ignored.
It's so true. How about morning sickness? What's that
Right.
condition? The
Yeah,
what's it called?
hyperemesis gravidarum.
That
Yeah.
people literally take their lives because
Yes.
living through it is so terrible.
Yes, it's not just morning sickness, it's throughout the whole day. And you're really told, like, oh, yeah, just have some B6 and doxylamine and you'll be fine. And that's like, it's not enough. It's really life altering for some people. That's a great example. So I did private practice for a while. I worked with big health systems, but ultimately I felt like there wasn't a great solution for most people. My private practice was very small, out of network, expensive for people to access. And then I had a really big dream of wanting to make this more accessible to people. I went on social, did a lot of education, but ultimately people were like, this education's great, but where can I actually get care? And I'm trying to solve that by a company I founded a couple years ago called Mavita Health. And that's a fully telehealth platform that focuses on this path to parenthood. And it includes prescribing, individual therapy, group therapy, and couples therapy. And we're in network with several major commercial PPO insurance companies. So that's huge. Like, people can't believe that they can get this care in network. And that's what mental health should be. But we're kind of gotten used to the fact that we have to pay out of pocket for a lot of mental health care, which it
Yeah,
doesn't
so
seem
it's
fair.
almost like once you get past the societal stigma of going to therapy or getting help for your mental health, then you also have to fight against insurance. Is It's just like one obstacle after another, it feels like. So it makes it feel harder than it is.
Yeah, like if you're actually ready, good luck trying to find someone because the waits will be months long or it'll be unaffordable.
Right. Well, I'm so grateful to hear that you've started something and that now everybody's going to know about it that follows us. So that's wonderful. I want to talk a little bit about quote unquote normal, because this is honestly a troublesome word when it comes to mental health and motherhood, right? Like hitting milestones.
Yes,
But when it comes to postpartum, what is normal, quote
normal.
unquote, from a mental health standpoint, and what isn't? Like, what are kind of the triggers that we should be aware of going into postpartum?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's important to differentiate what happens really frequently or is universal versus what you have to actually live with. And my concern is sometimes we normalize, oh, this is what postpartum anxiety is, or this is what depression is, but that doesn't mean that you have to suffer. You can get care and treatment for it. What is normal worry or normal mood symptoms that happen after, like things that we're not as concerned about or we think that self-resolved? One of them is called baby blues. And that happens in about 85% of people that deliver a baby. And what we see is in the first 2 weeks, these fluctuations in mood. One moment you're really joyful, the next you're very tearful, and you're like, I have no idea what's happening, but I'm overwhelmed by these emotions. That typically peaks at about 5 days, but it really should be going away by week 2. If that is persisting past 3, 4 weeks, we're probably in a different territory. Additionally, during that time, people feel like, oh God, I'm not getting any sleep, but I know that in the future, it'll be fine. My baby will grow up, things will be okay. If in those first 2 weeks you're already feeling hopeless, you're already feeling like your baby would be better off without you, or if you're having any suicidal thoughts at all, that's already crossed over into something a little bit scarier that you really should get treatment for immediately.
Yeah. And of what I've read, so like, please tell me more about this. It's a lot of that comes from, at least the baby blues comes from the huge hormonal drop that
Yes,
happens post delivery, right? Like,
yes.
what do you go from making enough estrogen for a year every day to
Yeah.
like nothing.
Yes, exactly. So it's actually the biggest hormone drop that any woman will ever experience in their life. And so that's really significant. And what's interesting is that for some people, it's like, I'm fine. But for others who perhaps are already really sensitive to those changes, you may know if you're sensitive, if you have a hard time those 2 weeks before your period and you're pretty moody, right? You may already have sensitivity to those hormone shifts. And so for some people, this drop in hormones can be earth shattering. And really challenging. And so that we think is sort of what really underpins the baby blues, but also what might underpin postpartum depression and anxiety and all sorts of mood disorders. Why we think this hit is really important is that it works on this part of our brain we think called GABA, and GABA is directly connected to depressive symptoms and a lot of other issues. And so what we think is happening here is that the system is getting disrupted. And when you have hits like not sleeping, when you have hits like, oh, stressors in your relationship, your life has changed so much, what maybe you would be resilient and get through in other parts of your life becomes really, really hard. It's almost like things layer on top of each other, and your resilience is a little bit more limited than it is at other times.
One thing I noticed after my first and then after my second is that I handled it mentally much better the second go around, but also the second go around, I focused much more on nutrition
Oh, that's great.
postpartum. But I
Fantastic.
know that's not your specialty, but that's something that I thought was
Yeah,
super
no, but
crucial.
listen, I always think about when people say, how do I prevent this from happening or what do I do differently? I think the other part of what you were saying is like when you're a first time parent, there's so many unknowns. And the second time around, you know a little bit more what you're doing, unless something right traumatic happens or it's a very different experience. So I think that's one thing. But when people ask me, what can I do to prevent this? Because I am such a believer in preventative medicine, but unfortunately, people come to me when they're already deep in their depression or anxiety or whatever it is. But how can you kind of have a really great outcome? And the first is always support. What's your village? And I know we say that, but I think it's really important, whether it's friends that you can connect with. We need to be more like Europeans and other cultures that like share responsibilities with friends. It doesn't just have to be extended family if you've like moved away from your nuclear family, which happens so much in this country. So friends, paid help, if that is something that is attainable. I think what I like to talk about is like, yes, it's expensive, but maybe it's more worthwhile that than having a very expensive stroller or the fanciest crib, right? Like, can we choose how we invest differently? But of course, we're told to get, the best products and the gear and not that the services are important. Sleep is the second one that I think is tremendously important. I know it's so hard when you have an infant, but this is where you can say your partner needs to take some time, whether it's pumping, whether it's, whatever you need to do to get sleep. If you can get at least 4 to 6 hours of continuous sleep, which is really hard, but that helps avoid depression and anxiety. And then nutrition is kind of the third pillar. If you're not eating junk food, if you're really kind of nourishing yourself, that is so important, not just for breastfeeding. Many people know that they need an increased caloric intake, but I think what's most important is nutrition really impacts our mental health. But people start to focus so much on baby and what baby's getting that then they're just eating snack food or whatever they can shove into their mouth. But I love, and this is where you can like really get the village involved, is where you can say to your partner or your support people, like, you're in charge of all of the nutrition. Get me good food.
Yep. Because I was going to say, even if you're fortunate enough to have easy access to good, organic, clean, wonderful, fresh food, like you're even a month postpartum, like I'm not hauling my ass to the grocery store with the baby, so it's all interconnected because, and I'm assuming that's why you have like support as the number one, because that
Number one.
enables so much of the other things that really affect your
Well,
postpartum
and
experience.
this is the perfect example of like, a million onesies aren't going to be that great, or like really fancy outfits that cost a lot of money. Instead, like, get an Uber gift card.
We were just talking to someone about, instead of like having this huge baby registry, that someone registered for like a postpartum doula.
I just think babies need so little when it comes to gear, but we need so much when it comes to services.
I saw an Instagram reel because I'm a millennial, so I live on Instagram, of doing like a postpartum food prep instead of postpartum food prep instead of a baby shower.
Love that idea.
I was like,
Like,
this
you
is
don't need people painting onesies for you or whatever it is that you do or helping you with baby names. Like, that is a really great idea.
Make me a casserole.
I
Make me stuff.
love that.
Christina, give me your bolognese. I need it now. She makes the best bolognese.
So it's really like shifting, I think, our priorities.
But I feel like that's a struggle that many parents have, is especially moms, because let's face it, we're conditioned to put ourselves
Yes,
last
that's
all the
right.
time.
That's right.
Like, what do I need? And how can I get that? And why am I being like stigmatized for saying like, no, I need these
I
things
need
and
this, yeah.
I need them now.
Or I need this time. And I think where I like to really kind of position it as is, yes, your child is now your priority. But when you don't fill your cup, when you don't do the things that you need, you are running on empty and you're probably not the best version of yourself. Right? This is the person that snaps back to their toddlers. And we've all been here, but I think it's very different to be kind of present and really in the moment when you have done the things that you needed, when you got the sleep that you needed. I know I'm a very different parent than when I don't. And I think ultimately, if you want to be that better version of yourself, it takes making some concessions or decisions. And I think it's really important to remember this is not an individual sport. Parenting was never intended to be that way. There's no badge of honor for being with your baby 24/7. There's no badge of honor for not letting anyone else help you with your child. And so I always think, like, take that time for yourself.
Yep,
And
totally.
if you can find those connections and those people, you'll see that people want to take care of your baby, want to help you out.
Christina and our friend Maeve, she had a baby in between our babies, so we've been going through this together, and we talk a lot about how people show up for us or don't show up for us. And one of our biggest pet peeves, like as a group, is when people put the burden of help on us, like, oh, what can I
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
Or just do anything,
Yeah.
literally
That's
do
right.
anything. Bring me any food, like come hold my
Just
baby,
try.
or
Right.
just try. And
Yeah.
if it's wrong, we'll correct you. Or if it's something else that would be more helpful, we can correct you too. Or we might just sit there and cry with gratitude that you
Yeah.
brought us dinner. I don't
Yeah,
care
or
what it
just
is.
right, exactly, or just
Just do
be
it.
with you. I know. And I
Right.
think that's really hard for our culture to kind of understand. So even saying, just bring me anything, do whatever, that's really helpful. Is sometimes what we need. We're just not there yet. I wish we could just be in a place where we don't ask moms to carry another piece of load by asking them what they need. But I think, right, I think at this stage, we're kind of at the place of like, you've got to just tap everyone and say, here, help me in whatever way you can. These are the options.
Yep. One thing that I want to talk about, because this is something that I kind of experienced with my first, was I think one of the hardest things about becoming a parent for me was the identity shift from my life pre-baby to my
Yes.
life post-baby. And it was horrible. It was very hard for me. I felt a lot of emotions because first and foremost, I felt guilt because I was like, I don't really like being a mom right now. Like,
Yeah.
my son had horrible colic for months on end. It was during the pandemic. It was just the perfect storm of like a terrible
Yes.
infancy. And on top of that, I was so unprepared for how much I would mourn my old life, and also how guilty I would feel for mourning it,
Morning.
because I was like,
Yes.
no one else feels regret over having a kid, like in the moments when they're screaming and you want to go out but you can't go out, or you miss
Yeah.
your friends, or you just want to go to Target for 5 minutes by your, and so I felt a lot of guilt over that, which I didn't with my second. But I felt like no one else was going through it, and I've come to learn that that's not true. A lot of people feel that way. We just don't talk about it.
There's so much shame there, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you see friends, or if you had, like, I had an IVF experience with my third. And so when you've had that experience, or when you're like, oh, my friends are trying to get pregnant and they can't, this is such a miracle. And it is. And I think it's about the nuance of feeling like you can have those feelings and also have loss and grief. But I think our culture is very much about extremes, and that we can't kind of have these two opposing thoughts. But I think for most parents, even if they're not able to verbalize it because of the shame, because of the stigma, maybe they don't have enough sort of insight into what they're experiencing. For most, there is this push and pull of, oh my God, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. And at the same time, I really miss my freedom, my life, what it's like to not have to kind of wake up all the time for someone else, to not have to worry about someone else. And I think we need to talk more about that, because I think it's extremely important. And when you don't, is when you start to have resentment, and you don't know why, and you don't know where it's pointed. Or mom rage is very common and something I'm seeing a lot of. And I think it's exactly that. It's these kind of repressed, anger and grief. But if we can process them, I think we're in a better place, and it's absolutely natural. I think it is something that really stands out, because I think we've been taught in this sort of myth of motherhood that it has to look a certain way or be perfect or beautiful.
One thing I wanted to mention was one of the reasons I think Amy and I are BFFs forever and always is because we both came at motherhood in a similar way, where it's like we know that we aren't meant to be with our kids 24/7. And we felt like there was a lot, again, comes all back to shame and guilt, right? Around that, but we felt like we could confide in each other that, like,
Here's
the
our little
weekends,
secret.
yeah, like,
Right.
"Oh, I hate the weekend." Like, I don't
Ah,
hate the weekend now
Weekends are
because it's like
bullshit.
it's
They're
so funny. It's
bullshit.
like the opposite. When you're young, you like can't wait for that to happen, and when you don't have kids, and then it becomes like the hardest part of your week when maybe you have help during the, and this is exactly what I'm talking about of like, first of all, why does it feel so much better during the week? Because you have some sense of support, whether it's school or whatever it is. Same way I feel like we should have that on the weekends, right? Why aren't we parenting with more friends and just sort of letting the kids roam around and having more people do it than like, I don't know, becoming like cruise directors of like, where are we gonna take the kids? How are we gonna entertain them? I think that's also very different from how Europeans and other cultures have kids, where kids just kind of come along to do whatever parents are doing. It's not about like having to take kids to very particular places. Uh, and kind of like, right, like schedule around them. So I do think that there's definitely a lot of things we need to change, and how to change happens is really like we start to make different decisions about how we parent and feel kind of confident and comfortable in that. In the same way of being like, my career became more intense after my second child, and that's okay. Like I thought maybe I'd take time off with my first, and then I decided that maybe it wasn't right for me. And you can try different things on, and different people have different needs. Staying at home with your children is so challenging and phenomenal if that fills your cup, if that's something that you want to do. But I think it's also okay to own that it's not. And for me, it wasn't the right choice.
yeah. And I mean, I'm in awe of mothers who stay home with their kids, in absolute awe, right? Because it's like the patience you must have. I want to come back a little bit to your European examples because I've got some European experience in my. I'm a dual citizen with Germany, and so I spent
Oh,
quite a bit of
great.
time over there. And um, one thing that I toed on a lot is how much leave they do get, or how much flexibility that they have with leave for their careers. Or, for example, I worked at a media agency over there, and they had moms that would work part-time so they could still work and be there for their children. And something that I'm struggling with, and I'm wondering how you've kind of maneuvered this, is balancing motherhood with work and avoiding burnout.
It's so hard, and I think it's more about like, I don't know if balance exists. I think it's just making choices, and more flexibility in the workplace would be phenomenal, and taking from those examples of countries that do it better than us. But I think ultimately we have to make decisions. What makes me feel best about myself and my achievements? And ultimately, like, that's what I've decided will make me a better mom. If I feel like I have achieved something that I want, for me, it's really helping people who have these mood issues and are having bumps along the way of becoming a parent. That's my passion. But in some ways it means that I don't get to spend maybe all the time that I would like with my children. I always say, like, I wish the days were 36 hours long, but they're not. And so I do have to make some concessions, right? Like, I'm not dropping them off at school, and that is something that I've decided I'm okay with sort of giving up. But for me, dinner and bath is something that I won't give up. I think it's negotiating these things, what feels good, and remembering that it's not necessarily quantity of time with your kids, it's really quality of time. But it's hard, and the guilt comes. But I think where I help myself is I say, you know what, this is a construct that we've been told to feel, because I know my husband doesn't feel that way. And sometimes what I think about is like, think like a dad, where I can have my career, I can have and then I spend time with my kids and we have a fantastic relationship. Why does it have to be that being a mother means compromising all of those other things? Is really, I think, something that we actively have to choose to change.
Totally. And I laugh when you say that because my husband likes to go golf.
I mean, can you imagine? Golfing takes like what, 5 or 6 hours?
It's like a day-long
Yeah,
activity.
yeah. Can you imagine just being like, I'm out? Like, and I'm sure there's no guilt, or he's not texting from the golf course being like, hey, are you guys okay?
No, no. But so I am not Amy in the capacity of like I am in my sweatpants right now, right? I want to be
Oh,
more Amy.
but you have nail art, so.
That's what I'm saying. So what I decided to do is to get my nails done because it gets me out of the house like every 2 to 3 weeks for an hour, hour and a half. So like that's my time, right? Like, okay, yep, you can go golfing, and I actually feel less resentment because I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go get my nails done now. See ya.
That's right. That's right.
And so, but these are only things that I figured out as I started to understand myself better, and then as I became a seasoned mom.
I know, but we need to share this message with people who are earlier in the process, because I think without those things, you can go crazy. And listen, it's not, I love getting my nails done too, but if you don't care about nails, if you don't care about makeup, it can be anything else. It can be going out with a friend, it can be watching the movie you've been wanting to watch for a while, or the show everyone's talking about, and just having that moment for yourself.
Totally. Yeah. And that shift of like male versus female, that dichotomy is
I know.
even in like my husband is like an acts of service guy and he does so much and
Mine is
he
too. Yeah.
very like patient, very strong, very calm. Like he's an incredible partner. And he does, I think, as close to everything he possibly can in terms of like how we raise our kids. And even so, there are times where I have to consciously combat that feeling of like,
I'm doing
oh,
something
I'm gonna
wrong.
be, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
something wrong.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Why does that feel wrong? I mean, it's not like he would just peace and be like, oh, I'm gonna golf for 6 hours and I hope that's fine. Bye. Like he's like, hey, I'd like to golf on this day. Does that work? What's going on? We coordinate. And, but then the second that we agree he's gonna go, he doesn't think twice about it. He might text once to check in to be like, hey, like, did the baby nap okay? Because he's curious, not because he thinks I can't do it. But when the roles are reversed, I'm sitting in the nail salon, like
Anxious.
I'm
Yeah,
anxious. I'm
worried.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm checking the camera. I'm seeing, and I'm the furthest from like a clingy mom that you can probably get. And I still feel like
Yep.
I'm doing something wrong.
But I think that's how many of us feel with work. And I know I similarly married a very modern man, and yet I know that when he has to spend a lot of time working, he's thinking, well, I'm providing, financial stability for my family, and that's a contribution too. But when I'm working, that's like the second or third thought I have. I think I'm not spending enough time with my kids. Someone else is putting my baby to sleep right now. Someone's feeding my baby. And so I don't say this very often because I think women are phenomenal, and I have a bias, but it's sometimes like when it comes to this, you like do what a heterosexual man would do. And they're just like, they just own it. I've decided to go to golf and that's great. And I'm going to enjoy myself and everyone else can be fine. I don't, right. And like, it's this really interesting shift, but I try to channel it once in a while. I think it really keeps us from maybe attaining the things we want to attain and achieve the things we want to achieve, because we're kind of being told that you need to, be 100% in here or you're terrible. And I just think we could make so much more advancements if we were to let go a little bit of those myths that have been fed to us, because our generation is spending way more time with their children than previous. And yet here we are, like racked with guilt about, spending it in other ways. But we need to be in the workforce. We need to be in politics. We need to be in all of these spaces. And I think we need to do what's best for us. And that can be, a lot of different things, but it can be leaving the house, doing work, like whatever you need.
Well, I want to just dive a little bit deeper into what you just said about we're the first generation to spend this much time with our kids. So, like, where do you think all of this guilt and shame comes from? Because it feels innate, but obviously this has to be some kind of an unwritten
Yes.
societal pressure that's coming. Like, what's your thesis?
I think it's hard. Like, I think it's from a lot of different directions. I think there's these traditional cultural norms that obviously there's a lot of spotlight on. This idea of like things used to be incredible when less women were in the workforce and at home, and there were more traditional roles, but one could have a lot of counterpoints to how that wasn't great, and women didn't have very many choices, and their husbands were making choices about birth control for them, for example, and we weren't able to own property and make decisions. I think ultimately women having more economic power, more political power, really threatens the status quo. And I think that may be part of it and why we're being pushed this dialogue. But I also think there's been this, in social media where a lot of us are and where we get a lot of our information, there's a lot of mess and a lot of like, this is what real motherhood is like, but there's also a lot of perfection. Here's what this kind of the Martha Stewart playbook of what motherhood looks like. And I think that can be really challenging. I think it's like the Mormon mommy stuff, like that whole space, I think is really difficult. It looks really perfect. It looks really beautiful. It looks idyllic. There's like 5 people in the background helping, but you don't see that. You see that these people are just like on their own, looking gorgeous, exercising, having a beautiful home, 5 children, and everything is great. So I think it's also those ideals that sometimes make it really hard to live up to.
Totally. The premise of this podcast, our account, what we've been kind of promoting for years now is things that we wish we knew. From your perspective, both as a mom, which I think is a unique position, and as, a mental health advocate and supporter, what comes to mind? What are things that you wish you knew or you wish people knew going into parenting?
Oh, I'm gonna throw out a bunch of different topics, but this is probably gonna be other conversations. Like, a lot of things are stacked against us having kids in the US. There's no paid federal leave. Childcare is so inaccessible and so expensive. Schooling is really challenging and will probably be more challenging very soon to get like a good public education in this country, for example. And so I think the chips are stacked against us. And I think the last Surgeon General said that it is it is more stressful to be a parent in the US, or that it causes stress to be a parent in the US for all of these different reasons, school shootings, right? And that's something that we actively have to think about when you drop off your child at school. It's hard to fathom. And so I think it's important to realize that it's not just you. Being a parent today and in the US is a difficult thing to do. And you can't control all those kind of things. What you can is this village, this support, connecting, listening to podcasts like this, and getting information to, again, make you feel like you have some handle on this, or that you're not, I think, giving into these perpetuated myths and comparing yourself to ideals that just are unrealistic, and being able to be comfortable with like, yeah, my life's a little messy. Maybe I'm not spending as much time as I want with my kids, but guess what? I'm providing for them in other ways, financially or whatever it is. And I'm also helping my self-esteem by going out with my friends or getting my nails done. And that's going to make me a better version of myself. There's no like right or wrong to parenthood. And I think another thing that I really like is this idea of good enough parent, where it doesn't have to be perfect. You should fail your child, because that's how they learn that there's disappointment in the world and that it's still going to be okay. They don't have to be in a million activities. They don't have to have the best grades in the class, and kids will be okay. But there's so many. It's like six weeks and you have sex. That's a myth. Postpartum. That's a whole other subject that I really wish that would go away, of like postpartum sex is a whole tricky business. And this myth that in 6 weeks you're kind of good to go is just kind of silly.
What's something that surprised you about parenting? I mean, you came from a unique position because
I had cared for so many parents
Right.
before I became a parent. For me, it was, I'm an only child. I'm a very independent person, high achieving. And I think I thought it was an individual sport, and that somehow I was supposed to be really good and get an A. And for the first time, I was like, actually, no, it's great to have people help. To the point where like my mother lives with us is how much I appreciate help and have figured out, I mean, I'm Latin American, so multi-generational living is not like that weird, but I was just like, yeah, everyone help. Aunt, you want to come over? Cousin, you want to come over? Friend, you want to come? Like, let's do this. And that was really interesting because I imagined that I was going to be more of a helicopter parent. But instead, I like haven't been, which has been really helpful. And I think it's because of everything that I saw ultimately, and what I saw worked for people and what I noticed didn't. And this idea that you should be a perfect mom and get an A, like, doesn't work out for anyone. It just sets you up for failure and for disappointment and for feeling like you're, not worthwhile or like you're a bad mom constantly. And that's not a great feeling to have.
Mhm. And you get kind of forced into that, right? Because I'm the same way. Hated team projects. I've always hated team projects. I just want to do it myself. Like, no one does it the way that I want it, so I'm just going to do it.
Right.
And like that lasted for approximately at -5 minutes because I needed help getting my underwear on after giving birth. And my husband's like, "Can I help you?" I'm like, "Yes, please." So you're forced into it, and it's good that like you were able to recognize that and not fight it and see it as something that's like, "Oh, this is great. I
It's great.
love when someone helps me." And it's so good in all these different ways. And I think maybe other people come to that conclusion in a more painful
No,
way.
that's right. That's
But
right. And like, I do think having other people love your children is such a gift, right? I know a lot of people are like, oh, they prefer my mom or they prefer my nanny, and like that feels weird. But sometimes I'm like, oh, it's kind of nice. That feels really nice and I think it's allowed me to have, 3 children. I never would have if I did not have help. If I was just by myself and my mom wasn't a huge part of our life, like I would have, I always tell my husband 1 or 0 because it's just not possible. And attaching to other people is a gift. It's learning other personalities. It's more love, it's more joy. So I think it's important when you're starting to feel that of like, oh, they should prefer me over anyone else. That doesn't necessarily have to be the case.
Yeah. I was just about to say, Amy, I love that my oldest Anna's obsessed with Amy. She loves her AA so much.
I
Like, she talks
love
about
that.
her all. I love when, like, my littles love like, it makes me tear up. Like, I get really emotional about it because it's, I don't have family around. We all kind of live everywhere. So, like, I've created that, and I love that my littles love the people that I love.
I do think that's so important, and that teaches, your kids to attach to other people, to know what it's like to have other relationships outside these maternal and paternal ones are also really, really important.
Yeah.
This was so fun. I'm like, can we do a part 2 and 3 and whatever? You guys are wonderful. What a great team.
Let's make sure that people know where they can find you so they can continue to follow and learn from you, because we need it in our lives.
It's so much fantastic. We're posting a lot of educational content on Instagram, and that's at Sarah Oreck MD, as well as at Mavita Health. And if you need care and you're in California, New York, or New Jersey, we are live there with individual therapy, group therapy, couples therapy, as well as prescribing. And we're in network with Aetna, Cigna, and all Blue Cross Blue Shield programs. And that's at mavitahealth.com. We also have evidence-based content and community on our app that's available nationwide.
Sounds awesome. Thank you so much for being here today, Sarah. We've
Thank
had
you.
so much fun.
Yes, thank you so much. I can't wait to listen to more episodes. You have a new fan.
If you found something helpful, insightful, or just plain reassuring in this episode, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you have a moment, leaving a quick review helps more parents find us.
We're also always looking for great guests, so if you know someone or that someone is you, please reach out. You can find us at whatiwishiknew_ or whatiwishiknew.life.
Thanks for listening. And until next time, stay sane, stay calm, or at least fake it until bedtime.